Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are working on Timon of Athens, and today we get to hear from servant in Act 3, Scene 3. You know why I'm doing this. But this particular servant doesn't get a name, which I think is interesting. It is one of Timon's servants. It's one of 3 of Timon's servants who have gone to Timon's friends to ask them for help since Timon's creditors are calling in their dues at the moment. And first we had Flaminius, who had a name, going to Lucullus, who had a name, and Lucullus said no. And then we had Servilius, who has a name, going to Lucius, who also has a name, and Lucius said no. And now we just have servant going to Sempronius. And when the servant showed up and asked Sempronius for money earlier in the scene, Sempronius was like, well, why didn't he ask all these other people? Like Ventidius has money, Lucullus has money. And the servant replied, well, he did. He already asked those guys and they said no. And Sempronius got all bent out of shape that he hadn't been asked first. So he denied to help Timon either. He was like, I'm one of Timon's oldest friends. I was one of the first people that he started giving things to. And so why didn't he come to me first? Like, that was stupidity on his part, and it's a blight on my honor that he wouldn't come and ask me for help. So no, I will not be lending him any money. And he leaves. And as soon as he's gone, this servant has a moment on stage by himself where he says, excellent, your lordship's a goodly villain. The devil knew not what he did when he made man politic. He crossed himself by it. And I cannot think, but in the end, the villainies of man will set him clear. How fairly this lord strives to appear foul, takes virtuous copies to be wicked, like those that under hot ardent zeal would set whole realms on fire. Of such a nature is his politic love. This was my Lord's best hope. Now all are fled, save only the gods. Now his friends are dead. Doors that were ne'er acquainted with their wards, many a bounteous year, must be employed now to guard sure their master. And this is all a liberal course allows. Who cannot keep his wealth must keep his house. So a couple of interesting things here. The first half of this monologue is written in prose, and the second half is written in verse. And prose was generally used to denote like a lower status, whereas verse was used to denote a higher status. So I think it's just interesting that he switches when he goes from cursing Sempronius to feeling bad about the situation and feeling pity for Timon. He switches to a higher status. I think that that's an interesting thing to note. But anyway, whether or not you hear that or know of that, what he's basically saying here, or what we get to learn from this, is that all of Timon's servants are very loyal to Timon, and that's great and lovely. And if they had the means to help Timon, they would. Whereas all of the people who actually have the means to help Timon will not. So I think that that also says something about Timon and the way that he chooses his friends and his associates, and is also maybe a social commentary on the poor versus the wealthy in terms of how they treat the people around them. You can extrapolate any of that out of there if you want to. But yeah, he's saying in the first half of it that Sempronius is terrible and people in general are terrible, and what a hypocrite he is for not wanting to help, but also getting mad at those guys for not helping. But then the second half of it, he's like, we're basically out of luck at this point, and Timon is going to have to go into sort of like survival mode. And the doors of his house that were always open to welcome everybody in are now going to have to be closed to shut people out so that they don't hurt him. And what a sad state of affairs that is. And that's how we end Act 3, Scene 3. So, where do we go from here? What do you think? What do you think Timon's next steps are? I'm curious to hear where you think this is going to go. So leave me a comment. Maybe subscribe while you're down there, if you feel like it. If not, that's okay too. I'll see you tomorrow for more. Mwah.